Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to Fallen London. Today we're going to be carrying on with the exceptional story, the Exile's Chalice, and we're about to go into the Palace of Vows. The promontory that bore the great palace of Meried must once have made these royal halls the highest point in the kingdom. Now the cliffs are eroded and braided with plants, and these once grand ruins skulk in the shadows among crags of rock. Sunken towers break the surface of the Z, accusatory fingers pointing upwards at the ground that betrayed them. There will surely be information about the chalice here. The morbid archaeologist eyes the precipitous rocks doubtfully. The gracious are close enough to make out their hushed words to one another from beyond a veil of ruins. There are quite a few options here. Let's search for goblets amongst the disarray. There are glints of gold and jewels down here, amidst coral and kelp and wet black moss. Tiles are disturbed, moss scraped clean and kelp shorn. Everywhere there are traces of the gracious's passage through this place. You are not the first seekers here. Goblets and chalices, cups and grails, even a beaker or two. Some are gold and fit for a king, others are wood or glass. There is even one wickedly pointed drinking horn, carved from the tusk of some ancient beast. At some point, between its sinking and rising, tremors in the firmament have upended the Palace of Vows, sending a banquet hall tumbling into a kitchen, a pantry, and a number of spare bedrooms. The result is a panoply of cups among the rubble, all beautiful, but all distressingly mundane. The morbid archaeologist is glum but determined. This was the seat of royal power. There must be information here. We can piece together some history from some ancient coins. Coins spill into the Z. One of these rooms must have been a treasury. An archaeologist's dream, says your companion. Dates, reginal numbers, important iconography. You find images of the first queen embossed on coins from hundreds of years apart. In early icons, she is depicted with wings, and then, in profile, holding an ornate cup. In the latest coins, her face is typically hidden, and plants grow up around her, as if in embrace. Depictions of the first king disappear much earlier. The morbid archaeologist catalogues the images carefully, constructing an iconographic timeline of the ancient royals and their wondrous chalice. The sunken hoard glitters, refusing to give up the greatest treasure of them all. We are being told to hide here, so maybe I should do something here. The gracious approach. The sounds of Meried are numerous. The lap of the Z, the drip of water from ruins, the pervasive susurrus of breeze-brushed foliage, the quiet footsteps and quieter breathing of the archaeologist by your side. And then, these latter two are silenced. The morbid archaeologist is stiff beside you, finger to their lips, eyes wild. A rustle, unmotivated by wind, the snap of breaking twigs, the murmur of speech. And there, a snatch of gold and bronze through green-kissed ruins. The gracious are upon you. Though we can either weaponize ruined masonry, a flimsy scaffold of roots and vines is all preventing this basalt column from crumbling right on top of the gracious's root. All it would take is a push. This will play into the archaeologist's anger, or we can remain hidden and spy on their progress. Perhaps you can glean some insight into your adversary's progress. This will make the archaeologist more sympathetic towards the Presby's forces. Let's weaponize the ruined masonry. The Morbid Archaeologist sees the plan form in your eyes and nods. Their panic seems to have sharpened them to a blade's edge, their gaze flickering back and forth across the verdant ruins like a commander assessing the battlefield. You topple the column on their mark, and stone blocks out the glint of gold below. There is a sickening crunch, followed by wailing and hurried orders in the tongues of the continent. The archaeologist does not flinch. We Presbyterate people are hard to kill. They'll be fine, but they'll have to retreat to their ships to heal and regroup. That exemplar will need to reassess. We have a little more time before they return. They seem very sure. Okay, back to the Palace of Vows. Let's promenade through a gallery of statues. They are cast from bronze and covered in a thick fur of fuzzy lichen. The Morbid Archaeologist brushes vegetation aside. This was probably the main hall. Enough of the statues remain to assemble a narrative. Here, the first queen gazes adorningly into the eyes of a young man. A king? There, the same to blue, but her partner is much thinner and weaker. On this pedestal, two sets of legs kneeling as if in entreaty, their top halves long since fallen away. The Morbid Archaeologist walks the gallery, running their fingers across the stone. I recognize this, they say of a statue depicting the first queen smashing a stone tablet. One of the law stones of Nida. They prop the presby's edicts around the city like graves. The Prester saith, "None shall set foot in Nida save he that was born there, he who violates this law." Their fingers have reached the smashed edge of the tablet, but they finish the utterance nonetheless. Shall be cast into the deepest deep and always forsaken. They look around at the risen ruins. Not completely forsaken. Not yet. Not while we remember it. Option to open a waterlogged safe. There, beneath the water, almost out of reach without a diving suit. A battered safe, embedded in a chunk of fallen wall, as if it once hid behind a portrait. It is too heavy to haul out of the water, so you must dive down in burning lungfuls to pry the ancient lockbox open. The craftsmanship is exquisite, even battered and overrun with seaweed. Its interlocking gears, its filigreed bronze, are sights to behold. The metal groans. The gears' teeth buckle and shatter. The safe's long stint in the deeps has not helped its integrity, and soon enough it bursts open with a gasp of bubbles, surrendering its sole treasure. The key you find within is long and intricate, made entirely of brilliant white stone. This doesn't look like anything else in the palace, muses the archaeologist. You have a key. Now to find its lock. We can search the shallows for the first queen's relics. Thanks to your investigations in the verdant chapel, you know what to look for. A Baroque wooden tabernacle, presumably more unique than a cup anyway. The Morbid Archaeologist has a rough estimate for the location of the first queen's ruined chambers, and glumly divides the area into a rough three-dimensional grid. You each comb your squares methodically, overturning rubble and peering into dark spaces, searching for one particular relic amidst a seaful of historical interest. You are wet and tired, and the Morbid Archaeologist's hair clings limp to their head. But then, wedged between the disintegrating husk of a four-poster bed and a half-toppled wall, something small and ornate, a carved vessel of dark wood. The tabernacle from the drawing. The Morbid Archaeologist signals to you urgently, and you surface. We'll have to examine it underwater, they say. If we expose the wood to air, it could deteriorate. A squat, flat-faced box, each face inscribed with banners in one of the continent's sharp runic tongues. Between the inscriptions, carved in impeccable low relief and appearing to bloom from the wood itself, are delicate scenes, all depicting one thing: a chalice. When you raise the lid, bubbles rising to the surface from the tabernacle's interior, you find it empty, lined with ragged strips of long, rotted velvet. The archaeologist shrugs fatalistically, surfacing to take another breath before resuming an examination of the casket. Well, let's examine the tabernacle's inscriptions. Even if the Meridian's chalice is not here, these carvings may hold information about its nature. The carvings tell a story that unfolds across the tabernacle's perimeter. A proud-jawed, regal man kneels before a radiant tree. He takes a cutting and carves from it a cup. At a vast and holy feast, tables heave with fruit and meat, and the figure and his chalice rule over all. A couple, a woman, with his same proud jaw and regal bearing, and a man, sickly and thin, approach the figure in his holy city at the base of a bright mountain. The ruler's aspect becomes cruel and twisted, and he rejects his petitioners. The craftsman who carved this panel cut this section crudely, as if furious at having to depict this moment. The woman, by comparison, all grace, steals the chalice from the ruler's chambers. The final panel, adorning the lid, shows her tipping the brimming chalice into her weary lover's mouth. When you surface, leaving the tabernacle preserved in its watery home, the Morbid Archaeologist's eyes are wide and dark. The chalice, it was carved from one of the trees of the garden. First Queen stole it from her father, the Prester. Their eyes are mournful. All she wanted was to heal her partner. And with that, I think we're finished in the Palace of Vows, so it's time to move to the Black Embassy. The building the archaeologist calls the Black Embassy is anything but. A dazzling facade of white marble, half submerged where the city meets the sea and held together by grasping vines. Any front door this place may have had is submerged, but there are cracks enough in the walls for a careful person to slip through. Stonework is incredible. The Morbid Archaeologist says as you clamber through the fissure and into the structure beyond. Their hands linger on luminous brick. Aside from the remarkable stone, the embassy's ruin appears much like any well-appointed courthouse. But the archaeologist stares with fierce, rapt wonder. A flash of headdress and armour through the foliage and fallen stone. It is becoming ever harder to avoid the gracious. Well, we can examine the diving equipment. Beyond the odd barnacle and layer of lichen, the equipment is in remarkably good condition. Beneath the grime, the diving helmet is beautiful. Flower and vine motifs grace the brass around the thick, blown glass faceplate. The delicate plants wind all around the casing, converging on the corselet below the diver's face to twine around a simple representation of a cup. Improbably, the entire ensemble appears sound. Only a film of black moss and lush vines betraying its age. Look, says the Morbid Archaeologist, inside. Affixed to the lining of the helmet, in view of the occupant, are 3 sand glasses. on little brass pivots. 2 are broken and empty. 1 is still whole. The archaeologist tips it over, and sand trickles into the lower bulb. 7 minutes. They breathe at last. Let's analyse a grand mosaic. This chamber is largely intact. A perfect central circle in the marble allows access to the Black Z. A curious mosaic overlooks the opening. Against the gleaming marble of the embassy, it is a striking image. A black silhouette on the wall, looming over the curious plunge into the Z. Upon closer inspection, the tiles are not all one shade, but varying degrees of darkness. Blue blacks and grey blacks. The green blacks of the deepest Z, the purple blacks of the deepest night. There are details there in variations of midnight. A woman, her eyes kind and hungry, her dress floating on strange currents. Her long, long arms encircle the room in a lover's embrace. Lady Black. The museum attendant mentioned her too. A genius Loki of the depth. They made even their darkest fears beautiful. There is wonder in your companion's voice. The dark waters decline to comment. We can dig carved tablets from under the rubble. Not all of the stone in these halls fell from roof or wall. These fragments are smaller, with words etched into their surface. Finding fragments that fit together is like doing a jigsaw with pieces from 100 different sets. But you are able to procure enough connected scraps for the Morbid Archaeologist to piece words and clauses together. These are diplomatic records of some kind, carved on stone to prevent water damage, I think. Only 2 returned from last descent, perhaps, or conclave. A few lines are ineligible here, and then does not appear to desire the chalice. Firmament continues sinking. Another way must be. The Morbid Archaeologist looks up, face wan. The Meridians fought and bargained all they could, and I will fight for them. The depth of feeling for these words goes far beyond professional interest. Ooh, we can extricate a wax-sealed scroll case. Look here, the Morbid Archaeologist has spotted something. In disturbing the rubble, you have revealed a well-preserved scroll case beneath a pile of rotted desks. The roots that wind throughout the city have curled about the case, but you are able to slide it out lengthways. Together you scramble up to a dry spot, so that the archaeologist can open it up and peer at the brittle parchment. This is very late Meriad. You can tell by the seal in the paper, waxed to protect against water. It's a letter addressed to the worshipful priest, or perhaps gardener. It's very formal, lots of epithets. I'll summarise. The touch of the deep lady creeps inland, and the ambassadors fear the taint will reach the tree. The archaeologist pushes hair out of their face. We should have another look around the verdant chapel. We need to hide again, though. The Morbid Archaeologist stiffens at your side once more. Footsteps in perfect lockstep approach from the Z. The bright presence of the gracious search party once again carves through these vine-clad ruins. You make for the nearest hiding place, when, just on the edge of your hearing, you make out the noise of another squad, and another. You are almost surrounded. You have 2 options. We can flee from their golden presence. The Morbid Archaeologist will not consent to remain where they might be caught in that kindly gaze. Only one avenue of escape remains silent. Or we can stand and face our rivals. The Morbid Archaeologist attempts to pull you towards a quiet ruin, but you refuse to be coddled like a beast. Let's flee. Run away! Even thus, shattered and diminished, Meried is vast and full of shadowed nooks. As you have demonstrated before, and shall do so again, with the Morbid Archaeologist at your side, you hurry away from the bright gaze of the Gracious, hopping over the jagged rocks and fallen columns that seemed so treacherous upon your arrival. The noise of marching troops fades behind you, and the pair of you turn a corner into a fragmented plaza. And into the ranks of silent, gleaming soldiers, faces kind and comforting beneath their jewelled headdresses. Their commander, the radiant exemplar, bears down upon you with divine understanding. A trap. You are at the bladed mercy of the Gracious. Oh, Christ. The radiant exemplar is huge, emanating an aura of unearthly good nature. Even alone, he would be a formidable opponent. And then there is the small matter of the vast array of weaponry unsheathed before you. These grounds are forsaken for crimes against the design, an entry prohibited by the Prester's degree. His voice is that of an angel speaking to a child. Intruders, by his grace you shall be returned to the Z, otherwise you will be given to the wax wind. Okay, so we have two options. We can attempt to escape the Gracious trap. The radiant exemplar is approaching, 100 cutting blades surrounding you. The Gracious have you now. Success is vanishingly unlikely, but 4% is 4%. Or we can try and talk our way out of trouble. The laws of the Presbyterate are labyrinthine and complex. Can you find the right concepts to untangle this deadly knot? Excuse me while I try to talk my way out of it. Cross your fingers. Your recollections of the Presby's edicts are incomplete. Or perhaps the radiant exemplar simply does not care. The bright, awful weight of his benign attention grows heavier and heavier. The trap closes around you. The Prester's sharp and loving embrace. And then, the Morbid Archaeologist steps in front of you. Their bearing, always so straight and taut, has lost its anxious edge, radiating assurance right back towards the assembled ranks of the Gracious. They seem impossibly at ease, as far from the pessimistic academic you met in London as noon from midnight. Fair brother, does the Prester not say, while my right hand works in the light, my left hand works in shadow? Their voice has the same ring of reassurance, of truth, as the radiant exemplars. I am an agent of the Prester, as you are, and stood formerly among your ranks. The blood of Adam's way courses through my veins. They roll up the sleeve of their jumper and offer a hand, revealing a forearm dense with tattoos. We share a mission, my dexter brother, and I am close to finding the Chalice. Clasp hands with me, and let us about our business. Interesting. In the ruins of Meried, there is a pause that stretches long into the night. It is difficult to tell what thoughts roil beneath the radiant exemplar's beneficent visage. The Morbid Archaeologist is equally bright and unreadable. They face each other, two golden and good-natured angels stood a hair's breadth away from bloodshed. Well, let's await his response. Blade points encircle you. The Morbid Archaeologist gazes resolutely forward. The scales of fate tip one way and the other. The moment is heavy and interminable. You are surrounded by bright projections of false mercy. But now that you have seen how the Morbid Archaeologist's face hides beneath their golden mask, you can see the same in the exemplar. glimmers subsumed by the light of the whole. Doubt, hope, recognition. Finally, a reply. You bear our marks, sinister sibling. I now know you. You who guarded the land from the exile's taint after Meried fell to justice. Go about your search. The radiant exemplar clasps the Morbid Archaeologist's hand. I shall not intrigue against family. Our victories will be shared. The gracious stand down, leaving empty air in the spaces where cutting blades had been but moments before. Your companion's gambit has succeeded. Somehow. It appears there is a lot they did not tell you. The Morbid Archaeologist does not look at you. They stride ahead, away from the assembled legion of the gracious. You catch up to them a little way into the verdant ruins, and the golden assurance is evaporated from their bearing. Their eyes flick to yours, and their mouth twists in a sad smile. That should give us some more time, although they'll be all over us now. This complicates matters. Their hands are bunched into fists, hidden in the over-long sleeves of their jumper. I suppose I owe you an apology, an explanation. The Morbid Archaeologist does not quite meet your eye, but they find a place to sit out of sight of Meried's main concourse. Right, I expect you want answers. I'll give them to you. The truth this time. Oh well, let's ask about their past. It is obvious now, perhaps it has been for a while. The Morbid Archaeologist has not told you the whole truth. I was once a member of the Gracious. In that, I told the Exemplar the truth. They roll up their sleeve once more to reveal the carnelian whorls tattooed around their forearm. Sinuous ruby river. Everything else was not. I told him what I needed to buy us time. The Presbyterate accumulates laws like a house gathers dust, and for every edict there exists an equal and opposite counter-edict. They sigh, and their face is nothing at all like the unnerving benevolence of the gracious. You have no reason to trust me, but I was always honest about my mission, if not the reasons behind it. I want people to remember Meried. The Prester should not bury their truths. After it sank, The Morbid Archaeologist trails off into memory. So let's ask about Meried. What really motivates their interest in this land? A sad smile. We live a long time on the continent. I was guarding the walls of Apis Meat when it happened. We all knew the myths of the Isle, that it was a kingdom that had defied the Prester, and was to be always forsaken. It was just visible from the mouth of Adam's Way, a distant jewel on the horizon. The tree of a single day was in full bloom. None of us were prepared. First, tremors that they felt in vesture, then waves pushed sea-water upriver, till Adam's Way ran clear for the very first time. And when the meridians came, clinging to driftwood and crowded on ships, the guard captains of the Repellite gave us orders straight from the Prester himself. We were to turn them all away. I turned them all away. They closed their eyes. I left, deserted, quietly. The Presbyterate is a sprawling land, but the guild kept finding me. So this is what I do now. A gesture of the ruined kingdom. I remember. Atonement, I suppose. So what are your plans for the Chalice then? It is visible in them, now that you know to look. In the twist of their mouth, in their restless hands, in the constant tension that rests between their shoulders. Guilt. My plans always stopped at finding it. The Gracious will destroy it or take it back to the Presbyter. That is what I want to prevent. I don't want to use it. I don't want to live forever. This concept is apparently funny, and they bark a wry chuckle. I don't even want to remove it from Myriad. I don't want to simply be the most successful looter. I want... They pause as if considering what they do want for the first time. I want people to come here, to visit, to live. I want Myriad to be remembered, to continue. I know I promised you treasure, say, greeting. But if we find the chalice, I hope you'll allow me to do what I must to keep it safe. Okay, let's inquire about our next move. The Morbid Archaeologist has their notes open in front of them as they whittle. That is so much to take in, but we found one important piece of the puzzle. The chalice belonged to the Presbyterate and was carved from a cutting of a tree from the garden. The first queen's theft of the chalice when attempting to heal her king must have stung. Do you know how jealously the College of Mortality guard the fruits of the garden? But there are still places we haven't looked. The key we found in the palace looks like it might be from the Black Embassy. These documents in the embassy seem to talk about priests. Perhaps the chapel has more to tell us. But let's go back to the Black Embassy here and use the key to search for a lock. A gleaming white marble key for a gleaming white marble lock. It is large and weighty. For a vault, perhaps? Even in the dark, the bright marble glistens like fresh snow, and it is difficult to make out details upon its surface. Seams between slabs melt into a white expanse. Carvings are invisible except to touch. It is the Morbid Archaeologist who finds the keyhole, a divot in an otherwise featureless wall. As the key is turned, the whole wall slides back, grinding against fallen stone, with reverberating tectonic complaint. Behind, miraculously unruined by Myriad's many travails, is a small, white chamber lined with inscribed slabs. The Morbid Archaeologist exhales in wonder. The room is a record, its walls clad with huge, gleaming slabs of inscribed marble. The very structure proclaiming its edicts to the world. Such is the luminosity of the stone that even in the dark of Myriad, perhaps even underwater, it is a beacon in the night. The Morbid Archaeologist traces the script with a finger, taking hurried notes. This is something between an archive, a monument, and an instruction manual, they mutter. Contingencies for a disaster. A twinge of familiarity. Though London is not the only city with procedures for tragedy. Even here, there are arrangements for every reckoning. Well, let's see if we can translate the walls. It is written in a pictographic simplification Meridian script. Perhaps they wanted to make sure even far future peoples could understand it, they suggest. The work is long and requires much cross-referencing with the archaeologist's notes, but you are able to reconstruct the majority of the room's urgent and ancient meaning. In the event that the treaty with the Deep Lady is broken, the power of our Queen will no longer be able to hold back the waters. Civilians should evacuate along the Bright Avenue and board the boats of the Seventh Gate. The High Gardeners will excise the chalice at the route and flee through the dock beneath. Myriad will fall, but we may rise again. They tried desperately to halt the city's descent. The Morbid Archaeologist paces back and forth, but they kept the chalice here, right until the end. At the root? Perhaps figurative? The root of what? The Morbid Archaeologist seems perversely downcast by this latest discovery. I should be pleased, they acknowledge. I know we are closer to finding the chalice, but can this be all that's left? I see only echoes of an old power, while the Presby's own is strong as ever. They survey the Z-tossed ruins, the greenery sprouting from the risen wreckage. The Meridians are all dead or gone, their grand kingdom. They kick and fragmented stonework skitters. reduced to so much rubble. The Morbid Archaeologist moves to a cliff edge, looking out across the Zee at the lights of the gracious fleet. What if none of it's true? What if the Chalice was just a cup and we are chasing stories? So we have a few options. We can advocate for pragmatism. Perhaps there are wonders here, perhaps not. But the preservation is their mandate as an archaeologist. The better question is how to avoid the Presby's forces. You can bolster their resolve. Though the odds may be stacked against you, you still believe you will succeed in your quest and emerge from Meriad victorious. Stoke his anger, and stoke the flames of resentment. Perhaps there is nothing here with the powers they had hoped. But will they just let the gracious run roughshod over this ancient ruin? Or also increase his anger? We can cancel caution and retreat. All you have discovered so far is legend and fancy. Why put yourselves in danger chasing after myths? That will promote reconciliation. I'm going to bolster their resolve, I think. And the odds are stacked against us, but we will leave victorious. Their crisis of confidence flees before your optimism like a shadow in sunlight. The Morbid Archaeologist rallies, turning away from the distant spectre of the Presby's ships around the island. Thank you for chasing the darkness away. They stretch and refer back to their notes. Now let us hope you are right. Back to the chapel. Search for a notable tree. The missive you found in the Black Embassy was addressed to a priest, and was particularly concerned about a specific tree. The Verdant Chapel is more tree than stone, a holy forest shaped into vaulted canopies and branching buttresses. Time has worn the original structures away, and they have grown back wilder. The Morbid Archaeologist grows frustrated, burying their head back in the waxen parchment as they pace, until you are forced to grab a fistful of their jumper to prevent them from absently stepping off the premature terminus of an aisle and plummeting into the Zee. They make no move back from the drop, their muscles tighten beneath the coarse fabric. Down there, they are transfixed. Halfway down the cliff, held almost horizontally by a straining root system, is a tree in riotous bloom. Even clinging to a cliffside, the burrs of this tree are heavy with fruit and blossoms. These are colours not seen in the anemic vegetation of London. Scarlet and ochre, emerald and buttery gold. Spring and harvest season all at once. Apples hang pedulously alongside oranges, and things that are both and neither. Solace fruit gleams, a hand of bananas grasps the air, fruits never seen in the Neath, or perhaps beyond, all sprouting in ruddy health from a single tree. We can study this botanical improbability. Incredible! The Morbid Archaeologist is flicking through their notebook in search of an empty page to sketch on. There is no visible evidence of grafting, no discernible separation between branches of one fruit or another, just smooth wood, shining as if lacquered, sprouting into 1,000 different leaves and blooms. In some places, the wood darkens as if drinking from some blacker, less refined waters. In some places, the leaves dangle, kelp-like in braids, like upside-down seaweeds. Here, neighbours with a gleaming pear, a polyp of something coral-like is sprouting in defiance of natural law. Can it be? You trace the roots down into the cliff and then back up into Meriad proper. They join up with the roots of shrubs with tendrils of moss, with the bases of needy trellises of ivy and climbers. The Morbid Archaeologist has caught on and follows your investigation, pencil behind their ear. Impossible as it seems, you are able to find no evidence to contradict it. Meriad is not simply suffused with plant life, it is suffused with a single plant. All the varied life blooming and feasting on these ruins belongs to one vast organism. And now we have the option to put the pieces together. Meriad's wild, drowned ghost drips and rustles about you. The Morbid Archaeologist's brow is furrowed. The radiant exemplar and his forces follow you like bright shadows, ever watchful. Something is cutting through all this noise, nipping at the back of your mind. The Black Embassy, the verdant chapel, the Palace of Vows. You have peered into the hearts of each and witnessed the secrets contained within their ruin. The Morbid Archaeologist's research run out of leads. The Radiant Exemplar will not wait for long. This will progress the story.